Still making their way in. Again, I want to announce, Taylor just asked me to announce, ladies, if you would like to go to the auditorium in the beginning, the Leaders of Light girls are doing they're doing their thing for you guys. So if you wanted to go and be a part of that, it'll last, he said, probably 10 or 15 minutes, and then you'd be dismissed to come back in here if you'd like to. If not, we're going to continue what we started last week. I think we entitled the class Owning Your Thoughts. Justin did a good job of previewing kind of an overview of what we're going to talk about. We're going to kind of dive in a little bit more today, but before we start that, I want to ask you two questions that I want you to think about, ponder on, and really, I guess kind of the questions that I want you to ask yourself throughout this study is, who am I becoming, and is this who I want to be? Who am I becoming, and is this who I want to be? So, when we talk about our lives, when we talk about what people see, and kind of the text that we started out with last week, one of my favorite passages in Scripture, Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, Paul says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. How many of you think that you're a nonconformist? You don't conform to anything. I like to think I'm a nonconformist. You're not the boss of me. You don't get to tell me what to do, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Rhoda, that's for sure. Yeah, raise two hands. But everybody conforms to something. Whether you like to admit it or not, everybody conforms to something. What Paul says here, do not conform to the world, the Greek, and I'm not a Greek scholar by any means, but the Greek present imperative verb tense is really saying, stop doing this. So in essence, what he's saying is, you're already conforming to something. Stop conforming to the world. Stop acting like the world. Stop doing what the world says. But be transformed to do what God says, right? One translation puts it this way: don't let the world around you squeeze you into its mold, but let God remold your minds from within. And it's, in essence, that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're going to talk about over the course of these next several weeks. So one of the things Justin mentioned last week was the law of cognition. And what that simply is how our thoughts become our life. One of the things he mentioned was the word strongholds, and we kind of talked about strongholds. I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper this morning, and kind of that's kind of where we're going to jump and start and kick off. What is a stronghold? If you remember from last week, what we talked about. What's a stronghold?
It's a safe place for a shelter where you feel no one can penetrate it. Maybe
That's right. So if we think about the older days, cities were built, walls were built around, but there was a place inside the city that was relatively impenetrable, where when the city was under attack, the leaders of the city, the VIPs would retreat to that stronghold, and they would be safe there. And in our life, sometimes we have those strongholds. Strongholds is a scriptural word that describes the areas of our lives where our thoughts have taken us captive. A stronghold is a lie that we believe and live by. Strongholds are formed by ingrained patterns of thinking that are opposed to God's truth and wisdom. These thoughts become our beliefs, these beliefs become our actions, and these actions determine our lives. So strongholds are pretty important. And in the cities, they were really important, right? So to be transformed, we have to renew our minds. We need to expose those lies that we believe. We need to capture those thoughts and replace them with God's truth, because what does truth do for us? It sets us free, right? The truth will set us free. When our thoughts become ingrained, we become attached to our lives. Sometimes because we've just believed them for so long. You know, the old saying is, you tell a lie long enough, eventually people are going to start to believe it. Sometimes because those lies allow us to feel like we're in control. Sometimes because admitting something is a lie means that it might call everything else into question. And sometimes that's scary. Sometimes we're so used to believing them that it's more comfortable to just keep believing them. And sometimes it's because so many of the people around us and so much of the information we are exposed to supports that lie, and then we eventually stop questioning it. So how do we destroy those strongholds? Someone read Proverbs chapter 21, verse 22. Proverbs 21, verse 22.
21:22.
Yes, sir.
A wise man scales the city of the mighty and brings down the trusted stronghold.
So the idea is this. In order to bring down the city, what did they have to do? They had to bring down the stronghold, right? They could go in and tear everything, destroy everything in the city, but if they didn't get the stronghold, what would happen eventually? It's coming back. The city's going to be rebuilt because the leaders are there, the important people, the people that mean something, that matter, those things didn't get destroyed. So the city's eventually going to come back, right? If you attack the city but don't take the more difficult action of bringing down the stronghold, the city will reestablish itself because the leaders are hiding out in the stronghold. So how do we bring down our stronghold? We looked at it last week a little bit, kind of briefly, but we're going to look at it a little more in depth today. Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 10. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. We're going to read verses 3 through 5. 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons that we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. What are we specifically told to demolish in this passage? The strongholds. What else? Arguments. What else? Lofty opinions, pretensions, claims that are made that we're led to believe are truth when they're really lies, right? We're told to demolish those. Why is it so critical then to know God's truth? That's how we do it, right? Can we do this on our own?
God's truth makes us humble, and these things are the opposite of humble. And we have to, through our humbleness, we need to go and try to tear these opposites down, if that's the way to say that, and let them know, hey, this is the way you need to be.
Yeah. Is this easy?
No,
Not really, right?
hardest thing in the world.
It can be. It can be the hardest thing in the world
Well,
at times.
It says it's our weapon. So it's insinuating there's a fight.
There's a fight.
It's not gonna-
Absolutely. It's a stronghold.
But we have a fight every day. That's the reason why we put on the full armor of God every day. And that's the reason why. Because we're going into battle every day against strongholds and arguments and people that don't
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I think one of our dangers as Christians today is complacency, this feeling of security, this comes about unawareness of the actual danger. You know, Christianity is not a one-time decision to be baptized and that's my decision. It's like 100 decisions every day of what am I doing now? I mean, what would Jesus do right now?
It is a,
Bunch of decisions.
it's a constant
Constant.
battle if you want to put it in those terms. It is a constant battle. We're going to wage war against the enemy, and we're going to have to make decisions all the time, right? And this is not something, think about going into a city and destroying a stronghold. Is this going to be something that you got to be passive about, or is this going to have to be something that you're aggressive with? You're going to have to be aggressive with it, right? You're going to have to, it's going to have to be a demolition. Some of you may be familiar with, like on HGTV, when that show, I think it's Fixer Upper with Chip and Joanna Gaines. If you've ever watched that, when they're doing these renovations of homes, Chip gets really excited about what particular day? Demo day. He loves demo day, right? When he goes in for demo day, does he take his screwdriver and back out every screw and take down this piece of sheetrock and back out this nail so that he can get these studs down with like carefully? Does he do it like that? No, right? He takes a sledgehammer and he gets after it. And he tears walls down and he rips cabinets out, and you just see dust and stuff flying everywhere, and he's got his goggles on and he's just fired up. Because that's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way it has to be with these strongholds in our life. We've got to be aggressive. We've got to attack these false beliefs. We've got to have God to help us to allow the truth to tear down these strongholds, stone by stone, brick by brick, until we can start replacing it with the truth. Does that make sense? So, if we don't do it, you guys ever felt frustrated about feeling like you keep doing the same things over and over and over again? You can't figure out why. On January 1st, how many of you guys make the same resolution you made last year or the year before or the year before? Yeah, that's right. If we're smart, we quit making them. That's right. I stopped making resolutions. But if you think about it,
She would make them just for that very reason.
that's right. But think about, okay, maybe not in this room because we're smart enough not to make resolutions, but think about how many people make the same resolutions year after year. I'm going to get better at this. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to be better with my finances. Over and over and over, you make the same resolutions year after year, and you can't figure out why it's not working. We feel frustrated. We don't see progress, right? So I know a guy who shortly after he was married and had young kids, his wife wanted him to move back to the country. She grew up on a farm. She grew up out in the country. He grew up in the city. So he was kind of excited about it, wasn't real excited about it, but they bought this tract of land and moved out there, and he decided that he wanted to cut a path through a plot of trees so that his wife and his kids could have a place that they could walk the trails, ride four-wheelers or horses if they had to. And he had to clear some trees. And self-professing him being a city slicker, he went to Lowe's and he bought an axe. And he went out and he started whittling away at these trees. And after about 3 or 4 hours, he's noticed, I still haven't cut this one tree down, and I've got 20 or 30 more to go. So he said, I'm going to do something a little different. So he goes back to Lowe's, and he buys a chainsaw. And again, him, in his words, I didn't want something that was really going to hurt me because I don't know how to run a chainsaw, so I got the smallest, cheapest chainsaw that I could buy. And went back out there to attack these trees that he needed to get down. And after one tree, it was okay, but the second tree, his chainsaw keeps hanging up and messing up, and he says, there's got to be a better way. So he goes back to the store and he talks to someone who's a little bit more seasoned at doing this. And he goes over to this aisle and he pulls out this chainsaw that is a man's chainsaw. And he says, I don't know if I can handle that. He said, let me tell you something. If you want to get rid of these trees, this is what you need. The Farm Boss 2000, like Tim the Toolman Taylor used to say, just the biggest, strongest. He was a little nervous. He said, I might hurt myself with this thing. But he got out there, and what he found was that was the tool that it took to clear the path. He needed the right tools to clear the path, right? When we take down the strongholds in our minds, we've got to clear the path for some new trails. We got to have the power to do it. And it doesn't come by us, right? 2 Corinthians 10 says that it's with divine power that we do that. Understand that we have to be intentional about this. Kind of like we talked about Wednesday night. Brother Ken was talking about the things that we do, it's going to take intent. We've got to be intentional. We've kind of mentioned that a lot over the last year and a half. We have to do something, how? On purpose, right? With intent. Yes, sir.
Jason, you probably will go there. Sure as they know. We're in spiritual warfare, and that's the key. The world don't get it. They're lost. And we just have to tell the truth. And remember, we're not battling just against flesh and blood. It's spiritual. We
That-
have to be spiritual about our war, these walls that we're trying to tear down. And sometimes these walls are walls that we've made.
That we've made, that's right.
And
Lies
we
that
need
we
to-
believed.
We need to stop. And I was reading this morning, every day, every week we do communion. What does God say about giving to Him? You got a problem with a brother, you better go work on that before you leave your gift there at the altar. And if you're angry, you got a problem with somebody in the church, you need to address your problem, because it might all be on you. And I know there's a song by Casting Crowns, it's me. I'm my own worst enemy. I keep getting in my own way. I say things and do things that I regret later.
And that happens to us all the time. And I think we've pointed out numerous times
That's these walls.
we get our own way because of what? Because of our pride, right? Because of our selfishness, our pride. And I think if we get down to, if you peel back all the layers, anytime something happens,
That's it.
it's gonna come back to our pride, our selfishness.
Our own problem.
Yes. So, like Grady says, we're battling. We're battling every day. Like Johnny said, we're battling every day against our flesh, against our old sinful habits, against the world that we live in, against the enemy who rules over this world that we live in, and the mold that the world is trying to squeeze us into. So this demolition that's going to take place, it's going to be a tug of war, and it's going to be a back and forth every single day. But like you say, we've got to make those choices all the time. It can't be, I made that choice once, and now I can just sit back and just watch it happen, because it's not going to happen accidentally. It's not going to happen automatically, right? It's going to be up to us to destroy these strongholds.
One thought that came to my mind, when I decide that I'm not going to do that anymore, this is not going to happen anymore, I've got to fill that spot with something else. If I can't just say I'm not going to do that and leave that space empty, because it's going to come back on me.
That's right.
I've got to fill that spot with something godly.
That's right. It's going to be filled with something. And again, if we sit idly by and just kind of hope that this happens, We're going to start conforming to the world. We're going to be squeezed into that mold that the world wants us to be in. Someone turn to Psalm chapter 18. Psalm chapter 18, verses 1 through 6. What does this say our true stronghold should be? Someone read Psalm 18, 1 through 6.
I love you, Lord, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am safe from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me, the torrents of destruction assailed me, the cords of Sheol entangled me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress, called upon the Lord. To my God I cried for help. From this temple he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ears. Then the earth reeled and rocked. The foundations also of the mountains trembled and quaked because he was angry. You said verse 8, right?
6.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. What's this say our stronghold is? Or should be? Should be God, right? Who's going to take care of us? Who's going to give us strength? Who's going to give us courage? Who's going to give us the passion that we need to do it? Who's going to give us the willingness to do it? He's going to give us everything that we need. And he promises that he's already given us everything that we need to survive.
Well, he gave Jesus in the temptations. Jesus beat the devil with all 3 times by him saying it is written. He used the word of God to defeat.
That's right. He did. He had the truth inside of him, didn't he? We've got to do the same thing. We've got to get that inside of us as well. So think about maybe some strongholds in your life. Where has the enemy taken control of those things in your life? Ask about, has he fed me lies about my purpose? Has he fed me lies about my security? Has he fed me lies about my identity? And if you can think about areas where you are stuck, why are you stuck? Is it because you're believing a lie that the enemy's telling us? Is it because we're believing lies that we've seen the world perpetuate? However they do that, especially now. I mean, social media is such a big influence on so many people now, okay? Examine these areas, identify them, and then you need to destroy those strongholds. Let's talk a little bit about what we are exposed to. Okay? There's a theory about the rule of exposure. What we are exposed to determines our thoughts determine our beliefs determine our behaviors, and our behaviors is what shapes our lives. So there's this best-selling author by the name of Seth Godin, who is an entrepreneur, a marketing expert. He's been very successful in his career. When he was younger and he was writing his first book, he sent it to publishers, and he got back rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter. And according to him and his words, he was rejected over 800 times by publishers. I think after my 10th rejection, I'm probably finding something else to do. But he kept at it. And he said, what kept me from giving up, giving in, quitting, and going to work as a bank teller was Zig Ziglar. You guys know who Zig Ziglar is? He's this guy that puts out a lot of positive talk. He listened to Zig Ziglar for 3 hours a day, every day, for 3 years. He only had 72 hours of Zig Ziglar's positive talk, but he listened to it for 3,285 hours. Now think about what he is inputting in his life. Positivity, right? And it came out in his actions. after those 800 rejection letters, somebody finally said yes. And now he is a best-selling author with over 22 books and he has become very successful. But what he put in came out of him, right? When we see a need for change in our lives, what is our first instinct? What's the first thing that we do when we see something that needs changing? Pray about it. That's good. Instinctively, what do we think? If I see I need to lose weight in my life, what's the first thing that I'm going to do? What?
Withdraw from it. You're not going to look at it.
Okay. What else? If you need to lose weight, what do you tell yourself you're going to do? I'm going to go on a diet. Right? Isn't that what you're going to say? I'm going to go on a diet. Right? Every January 1st, I'm going on a diet.
Every Monday.
Every Monday. Hey, you know what? My diet starts Monday. Right? I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to exercise more.
That's what I do, by the way. I turn from it.
Good. You're stronger than most of us. We go on a diet, right? I mean, is that bad? Is that wrong? No. But guess what it is? It's a behavior, right? Our behaviors didn't start out as behaviors. What did they start out as? Thoughts, right? So, when we think about, when we need changes in our life, when crisis is trying to overtake us, there was studies that were done. One study was you brought these people in, you'd bring them in one at a time, and they wanted to see how they would react, how they would think in a crisis situation. What kind of decisions would you make? So they brought in this room, and there is a bathtub that's filling up with water. And the instruction was, get the water out as fast as you can. And they were given a teaspoon, a tablespoon, and a cup. Which one do you think most people grabbed at first? The cup. Why? It's bigger, right? It helps me get the water out faster. And to everybody's knowledge, most everybody did that, right? But there was a few people who came in, and when they were given the instructions, they kind of stood back and assessed the situation. They thought about it, and they said, well, I'm going to turn the water off, and I'm going to pull the plug, and then I'm going to grab the cup and start getting out the water. What was the difference? They stopped the flow. They stopped where it was coming from, right? They assessed the situation, and they said, it's got to be coming from something. Let's stop where it's coming from, okay? When we are faced with, when we have assessed ourselves and we see the things that are in our life that we know we need to change, we've got to find out where it's coming from, right? Unfortunately, we've been, yes, sir.
We're searching the scriptures daily.
Yeah. Most of us, though, have learned this behavior since we were little bitty. Not a bad thing, but think about when you were a kid, what were you rewarded or punished for? Your behavior, right? So naturally, if I wanted a reward, I'd change my behavior. If I talked back to my mom, disrespected her, I was probably going to get punished for it. Not probably. I was going to get punished for it. But if I thought about those things, I never got punished for that. Why? She didn't know what I was thinking, but it was what came out, right? It was what my actions were. So we've been conditioned from a young age that if I didn't want a punishment, I would change the behavior. And that's not a bad thing, but we need to get to the root of the problem. It's like if you're walking in the woods and you come upon this beautiful creek, this flowing stream The scene is almost like it's out of a painting. But you notice there's a lot of trash and garbage around this beautiful creek. So you step back and you say, you know what, I'm going to clean this up because people need to enjoy this. So you go frantically and you start cleaning up the trash. And after a few hours, you step back and you say, that looks a lot better. You come back the next day because you want to enjoy this scene. And you come back to this creek and you notice again there's trash there. Somebody's littered this place again. And you kind of get frustrated, but you clean it up. Because it's a beautiful place and you want to look at it. You want to enjoy this creek. You like walking in the woods. You like coming on this spot. You come back the next day and you notice it's like that again and you start to get frustrated. But if you investigate by going upstream a little ways, you find that this creek runs through a garbage dump. Why is it being polluted? Why is there trash? Because it's flowing through this garbage dump. How am I going to keep this part of the creek, my spot that I like to go to and visit, how am I going to keep that spot clean? I got to figure out how to stop the garbage at the garbage dump, right? That's like our life. We looked at this last week. We're going to spend whatever time we have left in Proverbs chapter 4. Turn to Proverbs chapter 4. Just like the water in the bathtub, we're trying to remove it. We've got to stop the flow, right? Just like the garbage that is finding its way into the stream because the stream is flowing through the garbage dump, we've got to find a way to stop the garbage getting into the stream, right? Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. We looked at this last week. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. One version says, carefully guard your thoughts, because they are the source of true life. Another version says, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. Be very careful to keep your mind safe. The thoughts that you think make you the person that you are. This is why we can find ourselves so frustrated, so mad at ourselves, why we can get tired of maybe attacking the same problems that we have over and over and over again. Because we're trying to change the behavior, we're not stopping the flow. We're not going to up the stream and stopping the flow of the garbage in the creek. We're not going to the tub and turning the faucet off. We're just trying to attack what we see is the behavior, is the things that we see outside. We're not attacking the true root of the problem. What does Solomon say we need to be guarding? Our hearts, our minds, right? Anybody in here ever been to Fort Knox? Yeah, good. What is Fort Knox?
Well, it's an army base.
Okay.
It was where the gold, the National Treasury had gold.
Fort Knox is a 2-story structure reinforced with 16,500 cubic feet of granite, 1,400 tons of steel, and 4,000 cubic yards of concrete. The vault door weighs 20 tons. No one person has the combination to get in. Several staff members must each dial in separate combinations known only to them in order to open the door. 4 guard boxes surround Fort Knox, which is also equipped with all the latest and security technology. Because what is inside is 4,600 metric tons. Our standard ton is 2,000 pounds. A metric ton is a little more than 2,200 pounds. So I didn't do the math, but 4,600 metric tons of gold worth more than $300 billion. Would you look at Fort Knox and say, you know what, they kind of went overboard on the security of this place? We don't, do we? We don't say, you know what, they probably didn't have to do all that. Just get a padlock and put on the door. That's all you need. Why is it so heavily guarded?
What's inside is valuable.
What's inside is valuable. What does Solomon say to us? guard your hearts, because that's pretty valuable. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. We're not talking about the blood pumping organ, right? We're talking about like our inner being, our minds. Because what is so valuable, they take every precaution to guard it. That's our mind. There are so many negative, harmful, anxious, shameful, unholy, pride-inducing, ungodly, over-sexualized, hateful, helpless, selfish thoughts that come into our minds all the time, especially if we let them. And think about the things that we are exposed to. Sometimes they sneak in and we're not aware of it. But most of the time we're letting them in. Most of the time we're letting them in, and maybe then we're not even aware of it. But Solomon says we need to go Fort Knox on our hearts. We need to guard what goes in our hearts. Because what comes in, Jesus says, comes out, right? Out of your heart is what comes out. Make sense? Yep. So if our lives are shaped by our thoughts, and our thoughts reflect whatever we're exposed to the most, then we need to check to see what is exposing our minds. Our minds are like gardens. Whatever we plant and water, that's what will grow. If it's left untended, if we're not going to do the demolition and we're just going to sit idly by and we're going to hope or just think it's going to happen accidentally, then weeds of doubt and fear and pride, those things are what's going to take root. That's what's going to grow in us, and eventually that's what's going to come out. But if we're intentional, if we do it on purpose, we can cultivate an environment where truth and wisdom and spirituality flourish. Think about what your daily mental diet is. Think about what you do on a daily basis. Take inventory of these things. Are you constantly exposed to fear-based news? Like, do we watch the news all the time and then kind of feel anxious about the way things are going in the world? Some of us do. Do you immerse yourself in comparison-driven social media? You know, it's a big problem with our young people because they are constantly on the screens out there, constantly on Instagram, they're constantly on Snapchat. They see all these things that the world is pushing to them, and they feel insecure. They don't understand where their identity is. They get it from the wrong places. But that can happen to us as well. If you surround yourself with cynicism, your hope is going to be gone. Everything that we let in is going to affect us, whether we believe it or not. It is affecting us. Okay? But the reverse is also true. If we let in, if we expose ourselves to God's truth, we say it all the time, almost to the point that maybe we just block it out. But why do we encourage reading the scriptures every day? Why do we say read your Bible every day? There's a reason why, right? Why do we say pray every day? There's a reason for it, right? When you surround yourself with people who are wise, you're going to start to be able to discern things better. When you immerse yourself in worship, like we're going to do in just a few minutes, then the peace of God, which passes all understanding, starts to come into our life, right? Anybody read The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan? Anybody know that story? Anybody ever heard of John Bunyan? He was an English writer back in the 1600s, and he wrote several pieces of literature. One, his probably most famous, is The Pilgrim's Progress. It's hard to read if you read it in the way he wrote it, because think about reading the King James Version of the Bible on steroids. I mean, because sometimes the wording is tough to read. But he also wrote an allegory called The Holy War. And in this piece of literature, he compares our heart to a city. And the city is called man's soul. Man's soul. But to gain access to the city, there's 2 gates. And only the people inside can let the gates open. So all these things that attack from the outside can't get in unless they're open from the inside. And you might think that's kind of dangerous, but it's not, okay? One of the gates was called the ear gate. If everything about us is being molded by our thoughts, then nothing is more important than understanding what influences the thoughts that we think. A lot of times we underestimate the impact of what we listen to. If we go back to Proverbs chapter 4, right before we get our instruction to guard our hearts, what does verses 20 and 22 say? Somebody read verses 20 through 22.
My son, give attention to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them depart from your eyes. Keep them in the midst of your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to all their flesh.
What does Solomon warn us about in this particular passage? Listening, right? Be careful what you listen to. The words listen and ear and pay attention and heed are found more than 30 times in the book of Proverbs. Repeatedly, we are instructed to be very careful about what we listen to. Why? Because our ears are a pathway to our minds. Think about what you listen to, what you're exposed to the most. Is it good quality things? Is it the talking heads on CNN or Fox News? Is it like Mr. Godden did? He listened to positive reinforcement 3 hours a day, every day for 3 years. Are we getting that into us, or are we listening to the trash that the world's feeding us? I know I am out of time. We're going to stop right here and pick this up next week, because it is time for us to leave our online viewing audience so that we can do prayer requests. But again, I want you to think about those questions that I asked you in the very beginning. Who am I becoming? And is this who I want to be? And I want you to think about this week as you go about the week. Be conscious, be aware of the thoughts that you have, the things that you are taking in, the things that are coming out. Okay? Be aware of those things and take inventory of your life. And maybe we'll discuss it a little bit when we start next week. Thank you guys online for